Welcome. We're here today with a special guest who I will let introduce himself shortly. But I always like to wait until I see at least one person in the chat. Otherwise, I just feel like it's not working or I'm talking to myself. So for you, Orpheus, you know where you can see private chat and comments. So the private chat will be just us, and then the comments will be everybody's comments, just so you know.
Okay, gotcha.
You are always in here asking about my nails. My nails pretty much stay the same for 3 to 4 weeks until I have time to go change them. So it's the same as last week. But anyways, I'm glad a couple of you are in here. So Monday Fun Day. So today we have a special guest who's gonna discuss a topic that he reached out to me about. But I do want to say that I'm going to be live on OnlyFans after this, if that's more your cup of tea, or if both of these are your cup of tea, which a lot of you guys in here seem to enjoy both. So if you guys want to see the fun from the neck down, that will be at 8 p.m. on my OnlyFans, which is an hour and a half. You can check out my beacons, jasminejafari.me, for all my socials, Instagram, YouTube. I have been more active on YouTube. Me and Naomi have been dropping our little podcast once a week, Thoughts with Thoughts, over there, even though I know we call this Thoughts with Thoughts. I think every thought with thoughts is like me just having thoughts as a thought. So you guys can go check that out. I also have already pre-recorded some videos to keep dropping. I will be going to Miami on Wednesday. I'm going to go on the show Unfiltered on Thursday, which I don't actually know much about and I haven't watched them, so I have to watch them, to debate some red pillars with me, Destiny, and Alex from Playing with Fire, who I've done some debates on his channel. I actually did a debate with a black pillar, Wheat Waffles, this week, and I just put it up on my YouTube too. So if you guys want to go check out me debating Wheat Waffles, who's a black pillar, which if you don't know what the difference between a black pillar and a red pillar is, black pilled people are kind of like more gloom and doom than red pillars. And he's just a interesting fella. So if you guys want to go check that out, you can. And without further ado, I'm going to let our special guest introduce himself and tell us what he wants to talk about.
Excellent. Thank you again, Jasmine. I must say it's been a pleasure. A little starstruck. I've been following you for a while, but it's all good. Thank you for having me on, and thank you, of course, to your audience. A little bit about me, relevant to tonight's conversation. I don't usually, of course, introduce myself like this, but again, it's relevant to tonight's conversation. I am an FTM transgender athlete that is female to male. I know a lot of people can't tell, but lo and behold, yes, that is who I am. Pre-transition and also a little bit post-transition as well. I'm training to be a competitive bodybuilder, so I have had experience post-transition in athletics, and also I coach and train non-transgender clients and transgender clients as well. So that's kind of where my area of expertise lie on this, with all due respect. And of course, you'll help me out here, but just kind of a little bit of a background, how we got into this topic. It seems like that was forever ago now. It was like 2 months ago, but you did it was what, I guess, like an Instagram Q&A thing. Yeah. Somebody asked you about this, and you ultimately said, and of course, correct me if I'm wrong, that you do not believe at this moment in time, based off of what you know to be fair, that trans women should be allowed to compete in mainstream sports. Yeah, is that accurate?
Yeah. So I have done zero research on this, and I think I clarified that in my response. I haven't done the research on this, and I still haven't. So I want to make that clear. So I'm really interested in what you have to say, and I'm kind of going to give you, in this regard, which is usually not where how I discuss topics, I'm going to give you the complete normie, average normie take on some of the stuff you're saying. Somebody, I wouldn't say normie, normie, but I would say left leaning. I would say I am an advocate for trans people. I support the trans community, but this being a issue that's somewhat polarizing, that I honestly think the right spends way too much time talking about. yes, my normie senses go, okay, and that topic, that's where I lean with the very little information to no information that I have. And
Sure.
so basically, yes, you're right.
Yeah. No, that's fair. So I guess to kind of kickstart and get into this to talk this discussion, because there's a lot to it. Um, what kind of, like, what do you know, and how did you form your opinion, and I guess why? Right.
Yeah.
What? Yeah.
So honestly, there isn't much that I know. Obviously, the Leah Thomas stuff was kind of like the big thing. Now, if you listen to my previous streams, you know that I consume a lot of left-wing media, and that's usually where I align, although I'm not super far left. And I consume a lot of right-wing media just so I can educate myself on their opinions, their argumentation, and all of that, so I don't have like a confirmation bias, and then I'm better able to advocate for my positions.
Sure.
And the idea to me, and I always get really annoyed when like the Matt Walshes and the crazy people spend like forever on this topic, and they're like, oh my god, this is happening, and they're coming in, and I was like, okay, it doesn't seem like this is like affecting too many people in our society, but I understand why this would give people pause, because it would even give me pause. Like, I don't know much about it, but my general like guess, honestly, it would be that, when people transition, that like a trans woman's body is still different in some ways than a biological and a trans.
Right.
And I know that most of this topic goes for male to female transition in the female sports, as opposed to female to male. But
Right.
because women are disadvantaged when it physically in general, when it comes to at least certain sports, which is why one of the reasons I think that we separate male and females in sports. And so I always thought of it as one, like, okay, this may be an area where they're going too far. And two, it's one that has very low public support, which doesn't make it wrong. But I always was like, oh, I don't know if this is the hill to die on for the left, because it's one that, unless I get more information, it seems like, okay, maybe this is an area. There's, with the trans movement, I think largely they're just asking, for basic things. But then there are certain areas where it can get a little sticky. And sports is one of those areas. So sports is one of those areas. Bathrooms to me is fucking stupid. Like, anyone who's talking about bathrooms, it's like, shut the fuck up. That to me is like, who the fuck cares? But prisons,
Right. Can you imagine me in a woman's bathroom?
yeah, like that to me is absurd. All of the narratives around like trans rape or this
Right.
is not happening. It's not a thing. Like, that to me is absurd. You should go into the bathroom that with the gender you identify as 100%.
Sure.
And there are things like sports, or I guess things where it seems like an opportunity is taken away from a biological woman in a way that appears to be unfair, unless I get more information. So there's just a few areas where it's like, ooh, okay, another area that I would say this is like the changing of language to the extreme of like birthing person, menstruating person. Like, I do fall on the side of like, okay, we don't need to change all our language in order to be inclusive. And it can, although I don't really mind, I think it can be like off-putting to a lot of women who are like, I want to be called a woman, or I want to be called a mother. And I understand that. And I am sympathetic to those women, although you can call me whatever the fuck you want. Everyone calls me a whore all the time anyway. So that is kind of a really long-winded way to tell you how I came to my position, which wasn't through like extensive research.
No. You said a lot of things that I expected you to say, and you make a lot of fair points that people do bring up in this discussion. Namely, I want to kind of backtrack a little bit. What you said, that trans women, from a biological standpoint, right, they have an advantage over a cis woman. That is not incorrect. And what really actually amazes me when, like, either side of this discussion, especially the people who are pro trans women in sports, it's like they tend to not realize that that's a thing. Like, I don't think you or I need to bring up studies. Certainly there are studies, and I can get into that from a athletic standpoint, that if you are biologically male, right, you have a capacity, let's say, to exceed in, muscular strength, size, all of that, right? I think that goes without saying. And I don't think that
Most
is
of the time, some people.
yeah, I mean, but it's true though, and I mean, and I'm in the trans community, and even you'll have trans people, they'll adamantly deny that fact. It's like, no, that is factual. I mean, of course, right? There are maybe cis men, they don't work out, fine, whatever, right? But we're like, generally speaking, right? If we're talking about somebody who's biologically male, yes, their capacity for strength, size, whatever, is higher than that of a cis woman. That is not deniable, right? Um, I guess for me, right, and I did mention to you, I can see it as a way that we can be inclusive, and we'll certainly get to that as this conversation unfolds. My first kind of point in this, something that forgive me if any terminology is confusing, please let me know, that some people on both sides tend to not understand is HRT, hormone replacement therapy, right? What it does and what it does not do in terms of athletes, right? You got people on the pro side of this conversation. They seem to think it's a magical pill. A trans woman takes the estrogen and she's automatically a woman, right? And she has all the benefits, and that's absolutely not true, right? And then, of course, you got people on the other side of it. They're not really understanding of what it does either, right? So, yeah.
You're 100% right. I don't even know what the fuck it does, to be honest.
Right. And to be fair, I didn't either. So I started studying all of this. And even though I was born a woman, I didn't really know what estrogen, you know what I mean?
Yes.
But yeah, so to start off with that, there were two MMA fighters. I don't know if you remember these stories. It went viral, right? This is kind of like put this issue on the map. Okay. Both of these, women, and this is relevant, right? And I'll get into this point. They, prior to transition, they were already like serious athletes, right? One of them was like, for God's sake, a Army Navy SEAL or something. She could deadlift the back of a car, dude. It's like you can literally pick up. You know what I mean? And this was prior to transition.
So this is it's a trans woman or a trans male that we're talking about?
A trans woman.
Okay.
Her name was like Alana. This was a couple of years back, but this is when this issue really started coming up.
So prior to transitioning, she had this great physical ability.
Yes, like that far exceeded, that of like even a regular athlete. Yeah. And that is something going into this that already it's like a person's prior, athletic history. Were they resistance training and participating in sports prior to transition? That's going to be a huge factor going into this. Estrogen treatment, not to bore you with the like pseudoscience of it, is particularly in male to female athletes. Estrogen, the effects of it lessens the older the person gets, right? This person I'm speaking of, she was 30 at the age of transition. She was my age when she transitioned, past puberty, right? So going on estrogen, really, it had little to no effect on anything that was done prior to transition. And in the terms of muscle building, right? So in beginner athletes, you have strength and mass kind of correlate. So, i.e., the stronger you are, the bigger you are. Say that again.
What are beginner athletes to you?
So somebody who, let's say they're in their first year of training, novice.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
This person wasn't a novice, right? And that's relevant to this point. Okay. But these kind of people, they the stronger they are, the bigger they are, kind of your first year of training, right? As you advance in your training age into intermediate and advanced, right, that kind of tapers off. I don't know if you go to the gym. I know you mentioned you have a personal trainer. But
Definitely not an athlete though.
it's all good. As long as you're living fit and healthy, it's all
I
good.
mean, I got a little something here, but not much.
Oh yeah, I see some gains coming. A little bit. You're too funny. But anybody, like, even in your comment section there, like, we all know that guy at the gym who can lift really heavy, but he's like a stream bean, right? He looks like he's 120 pounds clothed, right? But he's super strong.
Okay.
That's the point I'm making, right? When you get to a certain training age, strength and mass kind of taper off, right? So with that said, in this case and in this individual I'm speaking of, when she went on HRT, she lost muscle mass. Estrogen has a catabolic effect. Catabolic means it shrinks the muscle cells as you go on it, right? So she lost muscle mass. However, right, this is a big however, she did not necessarily lose strength, to the point I made there, right? So in this fight, going into it already, we're not off to a good start. And obviously, you know how the story ends. She beat the shit out of this woman, this cis woman. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there are two things there we have to take into consideration. The first thing, like I said, estrogen therapy does not lessen the effects of what you did prior to transition. You know what I mean? Yeah.
So whatever mass or muscle you built prior to transition, according to the research you've done, that does not get affected by,
Very minimal, if that, and then of course genetics come into all of that. Like, it's just so much, but very minimally. And of course, like I said, as the person ages, it's less and less and less.
Okay.
Estrogen, of course, for trans men, a different story, but we're gonna have to table that. That's a different conversation for us. It's different. But you see what I mean? Like, so going into that, and there was another fighter, the same story. Prior history. So were they weight training? Were they participating in sports prior to transition, right? The age in which they start their transition. This is a separate issue, and I won't take up our time talking about this. I will go on record to say that I am not in for children transitioning. I do not believe you should give people under the age of 18 hormones to mutilate their body, puberty blockers. I do not believe in that.
So you don't, so just to clarify, you don't believe in anything under 18 other than, I guess, just regular therapy, like nothing, no changes to the body.
Yes, correct. For a lot of reasons. I don't know how you feel about that.
I pretty much feel, well, for surgery, I would say that's like, for the puberty blockers, again, it's like the sports thing. I'm uneducated in it, so I don't feel like I have an informed opinion, but my spidey senses gut tell me, like, I don't know. I'm not, I feel like that it definitely becomes like somebody who's a doctor or who knows this is the one who should be making that decision and not me. Although the surgery, to me, anything that's irreversible is kind of what I'm worried about. And with the puberty blockers, it seems like there could be irreversible effects of taking them.
There could be. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It is kind of one of those things that is, and that segues into other stuff, but it's kind of like a double-edged sword. Like, yes, somebody can experience gender dysphoria at that age. I certainly did, but a person's brain at that age are not fully developed to understand the impacts of, okay, this is a life-altering decision. What could that mean? You know what I mean? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. With that said, even in this discussion, there were two runners. I don't know if you heard about this. Two high school girls. I want to say they're like 16, and they were trans women. And this was in the news as well, that, the school board was complaining, like, how can you let these biological men, race against cis women? So even then, you see, even in that case, forgive me, I do not know if these girls were on puberty blockers, but I do know they were on estrogen treatments. But you see, even at that case, at an early age, that you, like, already, because these athletes, like, trained and went through a male puberty, they reaped I don't like to say that, but it is what it is, right? They
The
kind of reap the
benefit-
benefits of. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, with that said, though, I do think, I don't know if you agree, that the media tends to point to, kind of the extreme.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to already agree with you there. You don't even have to finish the sentence. The media does point to those extreme examples. So if I could summarize your point till now, you're saying that for male to female transition, when you start the estrogen or the hormones, whatever progress or whatever body mass muscle training you've done is only going to be minimally impacted by
Correct.
those. So yes. I guess if I was to ask you, like, policy wise, do you then think that in those cases that you mentioned, which I agree are probably more extreme, in those cases it is unfair?
For sure, undoubtedly.
Okay.
I guess, and again, like I said, it is, you and I we're right there on that. I guess we'll start to segue. Let's take these people, right, like a fake hypothetical, and say that prior transition, right, they did no kind of resistance training whatsoever, like weren't involved in athletics at all, right? So they didn't have the opportunity to, build the muscle, whatever, right?
So are we, let's just say like a 20-year-old male, just normal male,
yeah,
normal size, normal height, but hasn't done any extensive training. Is that
yeah. You're right there with me. Take that individual, right? And they decide to transition, and then they decide to start training and all of that. What and now knowing what you know about estrogen, I know it's a slippery slope. Like nothing's going to be a perfect answer here, but what would your opinion be about a person, like that? They started, they didn't like reap the benefits of pre-transition, and they start later. Would they be eligible, or do you think?
I think my opinion on all of this is that I just don't know the medical side of things and the science enough to, like, I don't think my opinion should matter because I'm just fucking shooting off the hip because I haven't even done the research, much less am qualified to make these decisions. My thing would be like, well, if what you just said is true, then even a person who had a basic 20-year-old man who hasn't done any training still has more muscle, more mass than an average 20-year-old woman, and maybe even one that's done a little bit of training. So in that sense, wouldn't there already be a advantage that a 20-year-old man has over a 20-year-old woman without, even if there is no training? And wouldn't those benefits still be retained if that person went on therapy or hormones?
Yeah.
That's my question.
Yeah. You are spot on. Yes.
Okay.
So, now let's take it a little bit further. Say this person went on puberty blockers like at 15, right? And just puberty blockers, they essentially stop the primary puberty, right? So if I were to go on them, I didn't do them, but that would have stopped me from having period developing, female characteristics, right? So take this same person, say they did that.
Okay, so a person who went on puberty blockers, which, to clarify, you don't believe people should be going on puberty blockers?
Not at a young age, no, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, which with puberty, I think always happens at somewhat of a young age.
Right. Okay. I don't think they exist, right? I have to acknowledge they do exist, but for this, fake, I do not believe in them. But let's just say for this fake hypothetical that this athlete did do it, right? So they never really reap the benefits, so to speak, of a male puberty, right? And you see what I'm saying? Yes. And then at the age of 20, they went on estrogen treatment. So let's say that their estrogen count is like your and mine, right? Probably transition for me, but like,
Okay.
you know, you're
Like
right.
pre-transition you and me. Okay.
Yeah. Bear with me.
Yeah, no, yeah, and you're making a lot of sense, and you're doing great. I'm actually really enjoying this conversation.
You're patient. Thank you. But yeah. So take that person. And their estrogen count is in the normal range of a cis woman. See, I would make the argument, right, that there would be no aversion for this person competing.
Okay. And I guess that would hinge on if a person goes on puberty blockers, and I guess we would need data on this, do they then forfeit all of those scientifically, medically? Do they then not gain any of the benefits of being a biological man or a cis, or well, I guess they're not a cis man, but biological, sorry, my terminology is not perfect, over a biological woman? Like, do puberty blockers take away, and it doesn't have to take away to 100% certainty, right?
Right.
I'm 5 feet tall, and women in the NBA are like, I just don't have that advantage. So I'm not saying that it has to be perfect. It just has, with your research, is going on puberty blockers enough to, you know what I'm saying, enough to level the playing field when those people become like 18 or whatever. If the person never went through puberty, if the male never went through puberty, does he not have any biological advantage in general, or at least not significant enough to have one over a woman at the same age?
Yeah, and those are good questions. And in your defense, even the medical science on this isn't revolutionized enough to answer all of those questions. Like, but objectively, I guess speaking, yes, this person would be, I would say, more of an eligible candidate to compete. Because, and interestingly enough, I'm glad you bring that up. When I went back and looked at more research on this, certain leagues, I think they says the NCAA, they allow trans women to compete under these parameters we are discussing. And that was going to be my ultimate point. Like, they have to have an estrogen count in a certain, whatever the range is.
Okay.
Yeah, and
I wonder, what are those guidelines now? So they have to have a certain estrogen count. What else?
Yes, and prior, like we were discussing, prior history to transition, like, and and even this isn't a perfect standard, because that would require an athlete to reveal their medical history, and maybe not a lot of trans women are comfortable doing that. Yeah. So it's not a perfect system, but I think ultimately, if inclusion is our goal, unfortunately, we're going to have to sacrifice other things like our privacy. But I think we can kind of get there. I mean, it needs to be fine tuned, But
this is just a situation to me. It's like, when people are like, no, they should, well, then where should they compete? It doesn't make sense to have them compete with the men anymore, right? Because they're not men.
Yeah.
Change their, I mean, supposedly, like, in most cases, they don't just let, like, if a random, guy who's never done anything to transition just was like, I want to be a girl. Like, people think that means they can automatically compete with women. But like you said, there are certain guidelines that they have to follow. Yes. And once they meet those, it doesn't make sense to have them compete with men anymore. If you're not letting them compete with women, what are they supposed to do? People are like, oh, let's make it look trans legal. There's just not enough. Like, that's a crazy solution to me. So it just becomes like, where do they go? And then for you, or I guess through the guidelines, but I'm also asking both what you know about how it already is done, and then does it depend on the sport? And if so,
it does. What? Okay. Yeah, it does. And I'm glad you bring that up as well. You see sports that are more strength specific, so stuff like I'm in, like bodybuilding and powerlifting, and I know somewhat of the MMA stuff, but fighting, and I've done a little martial arts as well. You see a lot of this, And
Mhm.
something I wanted to talk to you about. So we have this in non-transgender athletes as well, right? Performance enhanced performance enhancing drugs, PEDs. That
Mhm.
is another form of HRT, right?
Okay.
So my thing is, maybe to play a little bit of devil's advocate, why is it okay, right, for say a professional bodybuilder to be on PEDs, right? They have that unfair advantage amongst each other. But somebody who is biologically male competing, in this
Yeah.
situation, that advantage, right, is a big problem, you know?
Do you think it's because that what is it called? PED? I don't know any of this
Yeah,
bullshit.
yeah, PEDs,
Is that
PEDs.
do you think it's one of the reasons because that's available to everybody who can everybody take it if they wanted to versus the advantage that someone has because of their biological gender is not something that's available to everybody. Could that be one of the reasons?
Well, PEDs, well, they're illegal.
Oh, they're legal? Oh, well,
Yeah,
if they're legal, then
steroids.
aren't you breaking the rules if you take them anyway? Like, what you know what I mean? Like, so if you're an athlete and you get caught taking them, do you get kicked out?
Yes, but see, now athletes have a way of cheating the test. For instance, right? We just had the Mr. Olympia contest. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but that's the professional bodybuilders, like the best of the best. Everybody knows those guys are juiced out of their fucking gills, like they're up to their ass on PEDs and steroids, right?
Do they not test
We
them
know
for?
that. The Olympia is tested, but again, they cycle off and on. There's a way to cycle off the drugs before you get on the test. But again, the judges know this though.
Okay, so I guess I don't know how known and accepted it is in the culture because to me, if it's against the rules and people are just breaking the rules, I don't know if it makes sense to be like, well, they're breaking the rules anyway, so now anything goes in the sport because some people are having the secret advantage anyway, so now it doesn't matter what advantage any of us have. Like I don't know.
Right, right,
Yeah.
right. And you're not wrong, but I guess my question is too, since we know, maybe it's an unspoken rule, right? We know it's like kind of like a don't ask, don't tell. Like we know athletes are on performance enhancing drugs in certain sports, but as long as they don't test positive at the time of the event, we're not going to say anything about it, even though we know that they are, right?
What's
To
the
me,
percentage you think that does that? I'm just curious. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you.
say that again. I didn't hear you.
Sorry, I'm really bad with interrupting. What is the
You're good.
percentage that you think of like what percentage of athletes do you think are on these?
It depends on the sport, and I can only speak firsthand for bodybuilding because I follow that more closely. But the majority of professional bodybuilders are on gear, as we call it. I don't know if you know any of you like Chris Bumstead or well, Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? Like him.
I've heard the name. I don't even know what sport he's in.
But Arnold Schwarzenegger, right?
I
Everybody
know
knows.
the name. I know LeBron James, and that's about it.
The Terminator, come on. All right, but even Michael Phelps some years back got
Okay, yeah,
busted
Michael
for
Phelps.
yeah. He even got busted for being on PEDs a couple of years back. But I mean, it is widely used in the athletic community. It is. But I guess my kind of thing is we know that even though maybe it's an underground kind of thing,
Okay.
to me, it just seems like trans women, to me, I don't see the difference in, okay, the advantage biologically versus maybe the advantage enhanced.
Okay.
You know
And
what I mean?
is it the same drug that people are like for people transitioning and the enhancer, or is it the same, or are these different?
It is the same.
Okay,
Um,
it's the same.
Especially like for somebody like me, I'm on HRT. This is
Okay.
testosterone synapate is what it's called. Professional bodybuilders take that too, mind you, in larger doses than I do.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is it's in the same ballpark.
Okay.
Um, And that was my ultimate thing. So, regardless of, if it's well known, accepted, under the table, regardless, right? I guess my proposition would be, why can we not, in that case, right, since we drug test athletes already, why can't we, in this case, for a trans woman, test her estrogen level or whatever prior to competition or whatever she's in, and say, okay, you're in a healthy cis range for a woman, you can compete,
So someone just said it's what trans men are on, not trans women. Is that true, what you're talking about? Or do trans women?
What did they say?
I think it's about the hormone you were mentioning. If we throw the comment up on the screen, moderator, I just want to clarify. It's what trans men are on, not trans women. The PEDs, maybe?
PEDs. Performance. Well, all athletes. Even cis women have taken PEDs. I think they mean like estrogen. Trans women are on estrogen, and trans men are on testosterone. I think that's probably what they mean.
Okay.
But
well, I guess to answer your question, what would then, like, what if someone were to say, okay, fair, so why don't we start just randomly drug testing people, so to maybe get out of the, unless you're taking the drug to transition, which is different.
Right.
If you're taking it just to enhance your performance and you don't have a medical clearance or something, if they were to start testing and trying to eliminate that, would that change your position on trans women being able to compete with cis women? Or is a big part of the reason you're thinking this is just the fact that people are already cheating? So, and I'm not saying that trans women are cheating, but I'm saying that the drugs are kind of used to cheat. The ability we have. So I'm curious what you would think about that.
You threw a curveball at me. Jeez, I was not expecting that.
I mean, I know about this, but I am pretty. More senses.
Wow. I mean, in that case, fine, right? If we got rid of steroids, PED use, anybody who has any kind of advantage, then fine. Maybe we could.
You mean anybody who has any kind of advantage? How about just natural advantages? So you brought up Michael Phelps, and then like one little thing I saw one time of people arguing about this, someone said, well, people just have like, advantages over others. Michael Phelps has either a long torso, short torso, something that whichever one makes it easier to swim. One of the torsos makes it easier to swim, and that is an advantage that he just gets. I guess you're saying, like, if we got rid of any advantage that people could, like drugs that people take in order to enhance their performance, if we were able to better weed out those, then would that change your position?
Yeah. And I mean, I think you're spot on here. And you can even see that goes back to my original point. Like, I don't see it being a perfect XYZ. Yeah. Unfortunately, there's not. And I mean, you bring up a good point. Even in the Olympia this year, they had to up the weight class because it was so unfair. You got taller guys coming in, they're able to pack on more muscle mass than a guy that's like 5'7", that's, my height. So that, again, that you see that kind of, I don't like to say unfair advantage, but uneven, I guess, genetically advantages even in non-trans athletes too. And I think that's the bottom line and the takeaway here. And I guess that's where I was going with that it's like, okay, if we have this in non-trans athletes too, why the heck can't we just let, what I mean? I think you know where I'm getting at there. Yeah.
I think better like, okay, so for instance, it's like saying, well, why should we, if so many people are doing this, even though it's not allowed, we should just change our rules to basically treat it as though it's not like, I understand why like a sports league would be like, well, we're not going to change our rules because people use these drugs that they're not supposed to be using. That's illegal. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I got you.
That we're not going to put our reason, we're not going to hinge this on people are already doing something they're not supposed to be doing. Right. Like, oh, well, people say all the time, well, there's already guns here, so, why ban them? Like, they're already, so I do think if the regulation is that loose that pretty much anybody could get around it, then it's not being regulated properly. I also still think that if it's so easy to get around, and if everybody could do it if they wanted to do it, and so many people are, then I guess that's still an advantage that's available to anyone who's at least willing to cheat. And if a lot of them are, then if it's so part of the culture, like, I'm not even going to lie and say, maybe if everybody else is doing it, I'd probably do it too, so it's available still to everyone. I guess my question, it really just hinges on if there is some big advantage that, and it could be dependent on the sport. It could be that some people can, like, if you're a guy who before you transit, or you're a woman who before you transitioned, you were already like small and you were this, and then once you transition, you actually do line up with cis women better than somebody who transitions when they're already larger and stuff than the average man or woman. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
Would, like, do you think maybe guidelines on, like, depending on the sport, like how much, like, I just don't know much about the human body. Like, okay, you need to, instead of just looking at estrogen count, you need to be within this framework of what's acceptable, and having that framework be something that doesn't go past what, like, a natural woman's ability or body mass or muscle something. I sound fucking stupid, but you know what I'm saying.
No, I'm right there with you. So maybe, like, in addition to the estrogen count, some kind of physical tests in comparison, like maybe take the top female athlete in sports, and you have to either match or undermatch. I know this, and again, I know we're just kind of like grasping at straws.
I don't even know how this would work practically, but
yeah.
Like, if you're playing tennis and, Serena, like, if you are a woman who's transitioned and you're a biological man and now you've transitioned, if you're outperforming Serena by like a mile, like, maybe that, you know what I mean? I don't,
right.
To, like, come up with a policy and, like, make it practical, which is why these issues, when I hear about people's, like, oh, bathrooms, I'm like, that's not a fucking hard issue. This is one that I'm like, ooh, it is a difficult issue. And I think that's part of the reason it's so attractive to people. It's one where even people who are on board and we're like, stop being transphobic. They can go into the bathrooms that they want. They deserve all the same rights we do. But then it goes into this and it's like, oh, well, I support this community, but I don't know about this. This is one of those issues. And it's really hard to come up with like a policy, especially when we know so little, because like you said, there's not like extensive literature even on this, because this was a community that wasn't even hardly allowed to exist until recently, unfortunately. And now they're starting to finally, be out there, be open, and we have to be careful with how we mold these policies in order to be inclusive, but also not disadvantage other people.
Yeah, you bring up a lot of good points, and even things that I didn't even originally think of when I was going through this. I'm not going to lie, like, it is something that if we do move towards, it's going to be, I'm not going to say it's going to be easy. It's going to be rather difficult because we're going to have to consider a lot of things that you just said there. I don't know. I still think, as crazy as it may be, we still can, maybe not today or in like the near immediate future, but we can move towards maybe starting to develop some kind of guidelines, right? And I mean, and even more as we talk, you can ironically be more exclusive by trying to be more inclusive, because then it's like, okay,
I see what you're saying. Like, it just becomes like, if you actually are this tall and you can actually lift this much, then you can't play at all, and maybe it'll be a cis woman that meets that criteria. So that doesn't, and then I think of, well, even if we have an upper limit there, if it's much easier for the I guess, biological man or the trans woman to meet that, then it still is unfair because, you know, I think of the girl, which I think I hate her because I think she's an asshole for it. But I understand like the Leah Thomas situation where she's like, you know, a girl like that works super, super hard to get somewhere. And then she doesn't get a spot because somebody gets the spot who, if they have a natural advantage that makes it unfair, then the situation is unfair. I just don't know if that person really possessed that advantage. But if they did, then I do think, like, do you think that's fair? Like, how do you feel about that?
No, I mean, I agree with you. Like, even going into this conversation, like I knew I would agree with you, like on something like that. Like, it's not, you know, and I don't think we can deny that in that case. And you know, something else I thought about, this does not seem to be an issue outside of, I would say, like the realm of competitive sports, right? So if you're going outside of like the professional league and then college, high school, like, you know, like a regular community sports, right? Like I used to play co-ed basketball and stuff like that. This was never a thing. It seems like people start to care more when it's on the competitive level. So that was going to be something else I wanted to talk to you about, like why, like, should we enforce these rules in all levels of sports or just at the competitive level? You know what I mean? Like
I don't know where you guys PE classes, but mine were co-ed and there were yeah, and like, and I even was like people are playing hockey, and my teacher's like, Jasmine, get in there. I'm like, I'm not fucking getting it. Like, I'm not doing that. So like, getting fucking my shin slammed with a stick for no, thank you. But that's just me. But
I mean, that'd be me. Yeah, no.
Obviously, in those levels, everyone plays together anyway. I think you're right that I think it becomes a problem when like it starts getting segregated, and then when people, I think it really hits people when it's when it's a sport where the people that are in it train for it day and night, and it's a huge part of their lives. And then we get the situation like with a swimming team or something where somebody comes in, I guess in their words, takes the opportunity from somebody who worked really hard for it and then smokes everybody. And all of those people, all those women that work so hard for that, they feel like they didn't get a fair shot.
Yeah.
Whereas like if you're just doing like high school football, or you know what, not even football, if you're doing like high school PE, like you know, what is the flat, like, you know, we're playing in the trees,
flag football, people still play that.
So it's like, you know, for like 1 hour, like nobody really cares. You know,
we're old, Jasmine. I don't think people play flag football anymore.
Waiting, I'd be in the very back in dodgeball, like, and I just pretend I got hit and come out, but like, you know.
Yeah, girl. Yeah, no, you were definitely a '90s kid. We're old. I don't.
Yeah, I know. I'm 28.
Yeah, I'm 30. Yeah, I don't think people play flag football anymore. I don't know. Somebody comment that. Do people play that? But you know, I mean, no. In all seriousness, you do have a point. And I mean, it's a conversation that's gonna have to keep being refined. We're gonna have to keep, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then of course,
it's like, where is Leah Thomas supposed to play?
Yeah, right. It's like, you know,
that's the problem. There's no, we don't put her in the male swimming league. But if it makes sense, she's not supposed to be in the female swimming league, then what do we do? Like, can trans people just not play these sports? Like, that doesn't seem fair.
Right. And that's unfortunately where this conversation has been tabled. Mm-hmm. It's, and then again, you know, you have the flip side, somebody like me, and I know a lot of FTM bodybuilders and they go in sports too. I went to Taekwondo class a few years ago and I was up against this kid, and he was a biological male. He could have beat the living shit out of me. This guy was like a triple black belt, but no one cared. Nobody cared. You know what I mean?
That's true.
Yeah,
I guess it's because you're operating at a disadvantage, and if you consent to operating at a disadvantage, I get that, because if you're consenting to operate disadvantage, people are like, okay, it's your life, buddy. But what you're saying makes sense, because you're saying like, but I am a male, and I'm going to compete with males, but I'm. It's not that I'm choosing to operate at a disadvantage; it's that I have to operate at a disadvantage.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's, it's like, what do you do?
What do you
Um,
do?
right, right.
So what's been your experience?
It like the example I just gave, um, that has constantly been my experience because people looking at me, they can't tell.
Yeah, I totally
um,
understand.
um, I will say when it comes to like sports like that, even me being, I guess you can say enhanced, right? But being on testosterone, like even I have a disadvantage to biological men. And I mean, I guess this maybe doesn't necessarily even help the case of trans women that we're talking about, ironically enough, right? But like recently I played a pickup basketball game, and these guys, like, I'm in pretty decent shape, but these guys were
Yeah.
still like kicking my ass. Like they were like,
Okay.
you know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
and I mean, and of course, again, it depends on the sport because, like, weightlifting numbers, I can outlift some biological men also. Um, but that
I think
for me,
endurance is one where even females might have an advantage. I just heard that. It could have been just complete bullshit. Like
um,
long distance running or something. I don't fucking know.
when I was training to be a PT, they teach you that men actually have bigger lung capacity, so that would
Okay.
make them the better endurance runners and stuff. And
Okay.
that was even something that came up in this discussion. Like the fastest male was like 0.10 seconds faster than the fastest female, and like track. Uh,
Is that a long time in track? I don't know what track.
oh yeah, it was like a sprint.
0.10 seconds is a lot. Okay.
No, I got you, I got you. But he was faster than her because of these reasons. Men genetically have bigger lung capacity, so they have,
And is that affected by hormones or anything like that? Is your lung capacity affected by those?
Good question. It is not. And in the case that we're talking about, like estrogen treatment, for example, would not affect that. So if a biological man transition, he would have the same big lungs or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah, right. Also, men genetically have more muscle in their quadriceps, right? So the thigh
Okay.
muscles, which makes them able to run faster, jump higher, and things like that as well.
Okay.
I believe it was 20% more than women. Which, fuck you, guys. I try to grow my legs, and my legs are lasting to lean out in a competition. That's a side note, but yeah, for that
I got
reason.
some 6 guys. I mean, there's no leaning out for me.
Yeah, yeah.
There's no leaning for me.
You feel my pain in that, but I mean, yeah. So I mean, it is a thing that that we have said constantly that it's not going to be something that is going to definitely happen overnight. It's going to have to be a lot of just trial and error, and it is unfortunate, like you said in that case. Is like, what do trans athletes do? Is like, do we make a separate transgender league? Which I don't see why not. Even in the Mr. Olympia, they have a wheelchair division, and a Down syndrome division. Why can't we have a transgender
Yeah.
division? Yeah.
I see that. Yeah, and I'm not ignoring comments. I'm just going to read them like at the end, but I do see one right now that's related to that, and I have a point to make about that and what you just said. So Typo says, how about a mixed gender league for those that want to compete without gender divisions, one that accepts trans and cisgenders who want to join? And what you just said, I do feel like people who are really competitive athletes aren't going to want that. The people who are super competitive that want to be like, I don't want to say taken seriously because I don't think like it's like these people don't want to be taken seriously, but I wonder if it'll be something that like, people won't watch. Like, oh, okay, like how many people watch the wheelchair one versus and this is not to compare trans people to wheelchair people on wheelchair.
Yeah, no, but
I
I
know
get
you're the one. Yeah, so I want to
the
make that
minority. Yeah.
yeah, but I wonder if these people are just like you in an example of this. Would you be interested in competing in a trans league, or would you want to actually compete in the you know, and do you think it would be different for different athletes and depending on which gender you transition to? I don't know. I'm curious.
Yeah. No, those are fair questions. I mean, I would love to compete like in the Mr. Olympia, but I'm also realistic. I know being biologically female, I am disadvantaged. Like I'm not going to be like Chris Bumstead, right? 230 pounds, lean, being able to win, right? Like, and you bring up a good point. Like we compete because we're competitive, right? If I'm going to get like 12th place, no matter how hard I train, it's like, and I don't know, maybe that's just me, but it just seems though the only way to kind of just mitigate this and kind of make it an even playing field is to give trans people their own league, or to go back to like what we said earlier, these just very strict parameters. I don't know,
Yeah. Someone else said bone density is different, waist ratio and center of gravity are different. These are hard-coded differences. So are these also differences that that are kind of hardwired and don't change? Like, I mean, I got a crazy waist to hip ratio. I don't know how much testosterone I could possibly take to get rid of that.
Never. Those hips you got, they ain't going nowhere. That person is correct.
Okay.
Bone density, no, that cannot change, right? We're talking particularly muscle mass. Hormones do have a direct effect on that. Again, estrogen being a smaller effect than testosterone, right? But it does.
What if someone never went through puberty? Do those things still differ?
What do you mean?
Like if you like start hormone therapy at like 9 before you go through puberty, your bone density and all those things, would you have an advantage over?
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, and that's what we were saying about puberty blockers. Theoretically, yes. Again, and then the ethical of 9-year-olds transitioning, but theoretically, yes, we're just looking at the black and white of it. But again, I thought you brought up a good point earlier. We don't know by how much, right? If it's like a lot, or is it, just a little, but if we're theoretically speaking, yes. Maybe in the next few years, we will know that, because there have been a lot more cases now of children transitioning as early as 8. But
which people are trying to stop. I also see moderator here said bone density won't change with supplementation, but will change with weight training. I think that's true, but no, bone density doesn't change with weight training, or?
My school of thought where I studied, I have not heard that. I'm not saying that person's wrong. I have not heard bone density changing with weight training. Just
Okay. And then the other thing I wanted to ask is, if you don't believe children should be on puberty blockers, but you said that kind of one of the only ways that biological men won't have that advantage even after they transition is if they take those puberty blockers, then you were the one that was dictating policy, then wouldn't you be eliminating most trans women from sports by not allowing them to do anything before they're 18? Because an 18-year-old man who hasn't been on any kind of puberty blockers or anything or a biological man versus a 18-year-old biological woman, they look very different. And those differences, you're saying, won't be mitigated by transitioning later.
You got me there, lawyer. No, that's a good point. That's a very good point. Like, even if we again take that theoretical individual, they did the puberty blockers, whatever, that would again kind of, it's a weird discussion, right? Like, you're trying to be inclusive, but that would exclude, trans women, like the ones we talked about early on, who transition later at post puberty. Again.
Yeah, this is one that I don't think anyone has an answer to. And I think both of our positions are ones that I like, when there are people like, you're extremely reasonable. and you seem to really be looking for the truth instead of trying to push an agenda. And I think there are many of us, and not everybody. There are some people on both sides who are just like, nope, trans women, 100%. There's like they are like they have a foregone conclusion and they work backwards from it. And then there are people on the other side who just hate trans people, or they just think, oh no, this should never be the case, and it doesn't matter what the science says. And I think, but there are a lot. The problem is there are a lot of people like you and me who are really just trying to figure out what's fair and what's inclusive and what the best balance here is. And it's very difficult because this is a very difficult issue. And it seems like the conversation is then dictated by those two extremes because they're super loud and they're like, I have the solution. And we're sitting here like, well, on both sides, like, I don't know if that's the solution, but we don't have our own solution.
Right. And I appreciate that about you. You even bring up that viewpoint in anything that's kind of controversial, right? This, and I keep going back to, and I even heard you say this on a lot of things, like as society advances, right, we have to keep kind of just reconvening and
evaluating.
Yeah, it's never something that's going to be even, set in stone, as society changes, you know what I mean?
Research done. I think research and the medical community really coming out, because none of us know shit about this until, they tell us. None of us are in there. Like, we're not those medical professionals, although some people in here have degrees and stuff. That's great. But we need that research to come out and that research to actually tell us, okay, like, if there has been research that shows that, okay, whatever progress you made before doesn't actually get mitigated, that's really important information to know.
Right.
Because then we know that whatever level the person is at with their muscles, with whatever, I don't even know what the thingies on my finger. Okay, but whatever. What they are, those things are not going to change. And if that person is starting in a position that is already advantageous, then that person probably, depending on the sport and how much those things will impact the outcome, it's not fair. And we have to acknowledge that if there are women, women leagues in sports, and these women did work super, super hard to be there, and they're competing in a women's league with other women, and then somebody comes in who has even somewhat of an advantage, maybe not the advantage of a full man, but some of those advantages have still stuck with them, even though they've transitioned into being a female. I don't think it's productive to completely shut down those concerns. And do you feel like, I wouldn't even say the trans community, because I think people in the trans community, I don't like when people paint a community as all right, all left, or all holding one position. But I would say I don't even want to say the far left, but the super far pro-trans community, do you feel like they're failing in recognizing the concerns of those women, or even the concerns of people, in understanding where those women are coming from, or where people are coming from?
Yeah, absolutely. I tend to, the whole political stuff. If we're putting a title to me, I tend to be more moderate. And I 100% agree that these people, though they think they're helping, they're really not. On several things, that and the whole like 50 million genders nonsense. Don't get me started.
On the other side, the people that harp on the right, and I don't want to even make this politics, the people who I guess are anti-trans, the people that harp on this issue because they know it's one where they have popular opinion a lot on their side, they're also being very disingenuous and pretending that this is what all trans people want, and that they're intentionally coming in to get this advantage. Like, you see them even saying like, oh yeah, you know, this is now how you can be a good sports player. You could just switch your gender, like as if these people are going through all this just to, you know.
Yeah,
So I think on both sides, they're just, it's not productive to the conversation. But you being a part of your community, what are some, how do you feel about the way your community is handling, you know, some of that? Or, and I get, I'm not saying you're a spokesperson for your community, but I guess in your
certainly not, right?
Yeah.
Right. We could be doing a better job. I mean, I'm not gonna bullshit you. I don't know if you heard of this YouTuber Blair White. She's
Yeah.
she's very controversial, yes.
Are you a
But
fan of her?
I do like Blair. I agree with a lot that she has to say, and particular to this topic, she talks about it a lot as well on her YouTube channel. But I think, you know, and being a trans person, I can say this: we need to be aware, right, of like when it comes to communicating and talking about stuff like this, we have to be realistic, right? And that's what I said early on. Like, and I've heard trans people say this, like, kind of ignore the hardcore core facts that you and I talked about. Yes, if a person is biologically born male and they've had a prior, you know, history, whatever, like, of course, that person going into a woman's sport is going to have an advantage. I'm not taking anything away from these women. They're talented athletes, right? And I don't think you or I are disputing that, right? We're not taking anything away from them. No. But like you said, we have to understand and realize they are competing against, you know, women who've been training their entire life as well. Is that fair to them? And no, it isn't. You know what I mean? Yeah. And that's,
like you said that, but then the question is, it's also not fair to the female the trans woman either, who's probably also been competing all her life and now doesn't have a place to compete, right?
Yeah.
It's just, I'm sure I don't need to tell you this, but it's not easy being a part of this community. It comes with certain challenges. I mean, you even just expressed like, I'm competitive and I want to compete and I'm operating at a disadvantage and no one seems to care about that, you know? So it's difficult. Now, if somebody put you like, if the sports leagues came and told you like, hey, what are some things that you think we should do? Like whether it is to include a trans sports league, whether it is to, you know, make a distinction between when you started your transition and what your whatever stat.
Yeah.
What are some things that like, do you have, and I don't have any, but I'm wondering, do you have anything that if you had the power to, you would implement today to kind of make this topic more, or kind of move in a little bit of the right direction, in your opinion? Like maybe it is stopping the advantage of those steroids that you know, and a lot of people are mentioning, you said this too, that the amount you take when you're trying to enhance is a lot more than what you would take if you're just if you're doing it to
yes. And I'll answer a few of that. I mean, disclaimer, I've started competitive training. I'm actually no longer natural myself. I don't mind telling you guys that. So now I'm technically in that unfair advantage category, whatever you want to call it at this point.
Well, but no one cares because they're already like, well, no one cares if a biological woman wants to compete with men. They only care when biological men want to compete with women. But that makes sense. I don't think when people are like, well, no one, you know, it makes sense because obviously we don't want people to have an advantage, right? We don't care as much when people have a disadvantage.
I think you're right. I think that's the bottom line, you know, and as it stands now, and of course, you know, anybody in the chat, and you know, of course, like, I want your opinion. As uncomfortable as it is, right? Nothing's going to be comfortable in this conversation. I think, you know, maybe we can get somewhere here, and they're starting to do this in certain leagues.
Okay.
Kind of going back to like what we said earlier, like just kind of having parameters in place, right? what those parameters look like. We're still trying to hash out the details, but namely the big ones, prior training history. I know, like you said, that automatically going in is going to exclude certain trans women. It's unfortunate, but it's true. But that does count going into this conversation. That how far along they have been on their estrogen treatment, when they started it, because the age which they started is important. Yeah. Those three things are the biggest things and are the determining factors in this.
Yeah.
Again, what that looks like. You're right.
I mean, and there is just a brute reality to sports. I mean, I'm sure I don't have to tell you, since you compete, or you like, sometimes you don't make it, whether you're trans or cis or anything, you don't make the team. You just can't get fast enough. You don't cut it. And I think we have to be okay with some people just not cutting it, because they have too much of an advantage. Like, I think if we try to go super everything's fair, everything like kind of the everybody gets a trophy vibe, I understand why that's so off-putting to people, including the athletes themselves. Right? Like, a lot of them are competitive. They want to compete. And how prevalent, because I mean, I've heard of like 3 or 4 people, like you mentioned. I haven't heard like of a trans woman NBA player or even NFL player. Like, do you think those things are going to become more common, or do you think that there's already been so much pushback to someone like poor Leah that like these people are not even like
trying anymore?
What do you think? Yeah, I don't know what the future will look like, because I can't even imagine what kind of, it would be a fucking outrage if they had a biological male in the WNBA.
Oh God, man. I can only imagine. Yeah. I think, unfortunately, trans women have stopped trying to, even now, and I'm glad you bring that up. I'll even have a trans woman come into the gym, new to the gym, so afraid to even just go out and just, start to work out, or even like they'll shyly come up to me, is like, hey, can you help me out with such and such, and I'm like, absolutely, of course, but it's even gotten down to that point, that like trans women, I feel they have to be even more so mindful of their surroundings and people around them and how they're being perceived when it comes to athletics and sports, and it's a sad, unfortunate reality, it breaks my heart personally. I'm sure you can understand, because I wouldn't want that, but it's like, at the same time, there is two sides to this discussion. Sure, we want to be inclusive, but we don't want to discredit cisgendered women
or be, unreasonable. And this is a topic that I think the trans stuff is the sports stuff is a super hot topic, but I know this has been expressed when it comes to women's scholarships, or like when a scholarship that was made to go to women, that was like a space for women to, and then it goes to like a trans woman, that upsets some people because they think the opportunity was taken away. There's issues like that, which I think are things that we need to think about. And I think sometimes when people just go, no, it's like, and you pretend there's no reason on the other side, and this goes either way. If you pretend that the other side doesn't have a legitimate claim at all, it kind of ruins it for everybody. It's off-putting, and then it makes it hard to distinguish between like what I just said, like bathrooms are like, you have no evidence that like blah 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 happens. That is not, you don't have a case there. But you do have a case when it comes to sports. And if we pretend that you don't have a case at all, anywhere, at any time, then we can't at least get those wins when it comes to places where they should obviously be had. Like bathrooms, like certain things. And so that is my main concern with any of this that comes up, is if people that are fighting for, like, they are fighting for the trans community, if they refuse to see any argument for the other side when it's a reasonable one, and we pretend they're all the same, then it discredits those areas where we have all the facts and all the weight is in our favor, because sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's more even. We don't know. I mean, we just spent an hour and 14 minutes. We didn't even, I'm not saying we didn't get anywhere in the conversation, but we didn't get anywhere in solving this issue because,
right.
you
Right.
know,
I don't think we will, but
we got what? We got 13 more minutes. It's gonna come, guys.
Right. We're gonna solve world peace in that time too.
Yeah, we're gonna figure this out for everybody. But
yeah.
I think more information, like more studies, more medical research coming out. There's always going to be people who are going to deny all of it as woke. Some people are going to, it depends what the studies say. If it's something that says like, oh, actually there's going to be those people that are just going to refuse to see facts, refuse to see science, refuse to accept medicine. But there are a lot of people, and I would say the majority, even if they're not the loudest online, that are where you and I fall, which is like, this is something that we don't have a clear answer for. And it seems like somebody, no matter what, is going to, at least in some circumstances, be hurt unfairly here, or they're going to,
the
athlete, the trans woman athlete, or it's the women that they're competing against that are now competing at a disadvantage against somebody who has biological advantages. It's tough. Maybe for different sports, it's different. I don't know. I don't have the answer, but now it's become also highly politicized, as you well know.
Right.
You know, I think it's insane that we have candidates going on and being like, and I pledge to outlaw women or men competing with women and and I'm just like, what do you mean? Like, you're not, you don't want to look at the medical consensus. You don't like, it's just common sense. Well, no, this issue isn't common sense. And I think people like you, who obviously you're a part of this community and you want what's best, when you know, I was like, oh, I don't know. I had no idea what you would come on the stream and do, but I could tell right away that you were actually, at least to your best ability, which means it doesn't mean you're 100% right. I mean, we're all can be wrong, but you, to the best of your ability with the data you have, are trying to relay that information as credibly as you can and try to have a discussion about this. And I think it's those people, because I do think that that's the majority of people that we need to educate on this, me being one of them. So that if there is information I'm missing that could change my opinion, I'd like to hear it. Like, I learned a lot from this. Okay. Seems like if somebody hasn't transitioned up to a certain point, or they already trained pre-transition, that seems to have a lot of advantages associated with it.
Right.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
So
you're awesome. I mean, I knew that, but yeah.
Thank you so much. You are too. I really enjoyed this conversation. So it looks like a lot of people in the chat are just going back and forth with each other.
Okay.
I'm gonna see if there's any comments to throw up, and then I'm gonna have you plug your, I was about to say OnlyFans. I don't know if you have one. If you have one, go ahead and plug it. Your Instagram. I'm actually gonna follow you on Instagram because I just think you're awesome and I really enjoyed this conversation. But yeah, you can tell people where to find you if people want to maybe if someone's like, oh, I have this, maybe you can consider, I want to reach out to you.
Transition questions. Yeah,
transition questions if anyone's watching and they're interested in that or anything like that. Okay, let's see. I'm not going to read anything that is like people going back and forth, because then I have to go to the top of the comment and I don't know how to do that.
Bro, your comment section, I have to say,
it is sometimes a war zone. Although,
how does Jasmine deal with it? It's draining, man.
I know, but you know me. I'm like I love, I don't want to say arguing, but I love banter. And I love just going, I love trying to duke things out in the marketplace of ideas. So when it comes to a topic like this, where I don't know, I like to say that. I don't think people should have like I like to be able to discern when my opinion should matter and when it doesn't. And with this, I don't think my opinion matters very much because I'm not well educated enough. You seem to be more educated than I am, so that's why your opinion now informed my opinion.
Cool, though, you're an ally. You're an ally.
Yes, always. So yeah, Dingus says, I believe trans people should live their truth and competitive sports need to define limits to keep things competitive. Okay.
Okay, I can dig that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was a competitive swimmer and seeing a male, I don't even know how to say that name, something swimmer switch leagues overnight does not sit right with me. But I think somebody else in the comments was like, well, it doesn't happen overnight. I think that's fair. This idea that people just switch overnight and then start playing for the other. I mean, I don't feel like that happens very often. Like I feel like
Right.
these are people who transition and then it takes time.
Right.
And there are at least already, according to you, and I've heard this before too, there are already rules and like you have to meet something, you know,
yes.
in order to, okay. So I see that kind of wording of, overnight. I don't think it's even happening overnight now that people are doing that.
Yeah, that's a lot of stuff like people who are, they seem to, even in anything transgender, people think like, oh, you can just throw on a wig and people, like, no, it doesn't happen overnight. It's like steadily increasing. Yeah.
But I don't know a call it. This is making me gonna sound dumb. I just don't know. I don't know sports words. I don't know sports words. Okay, so same person in the comment right after this, 8:36 p.m. Okay, yeah. So if you go to 8:36 p.m., I'm telling this to my moderator. Throw up the one about the competitive swimmer. Yeah, what kind of male? What?
I was a competitive swimmer and seeing a male.
What is
collegiate? What swimmer? Oh, I guess so. They were swimming in college, right?
I don't
swimmer and does not sit right with me.
This is the one we just read.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, and then the one below it, if the moderator could throw up. Okay, so there's a conflict between biology and philosophy. It is unique to the human condition allowed by our advanced brains. Society will continue to evolve beyond our animal instincts. Think that's fair?
Yeah.
More.
Slowly but surely, I guess.
Eva at 8:22 says Leah Thomas doesn't have that much of an advantage though. She's good and did well in a couple races, and then everyone ignores her other races where she doesn't win. So I don't know how much of an advantage Leah had. I don't have access to her medical records. I don't know if you know more about the advantages she had, but
so from what I heard in that. I mean, whoever, y'all correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah. So prior, her record wasn't as good, right? But when she switched over, it was like now she was a beast. And that was what was the problem with that. Again, people take it for what it was. And that's why that story took off, because they were trying to say that, when she, transitioned, she had, an unfair advantage and she wasn't good as a male swimmer, Yeah.
Wasn't one of her teammates the one that was going around speaking about this in schools, and she was cornered? And did you hear about this?
Oh, what happened? I did not hear that.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, anybody, but I think it was somebody, and I believe it was a woman on the team with Leah that first of all, this woman had been on the Daily Wire, she, all of the conservatives snatched up this woman because she was willing to talk about how unfair it was. And she went to a school, and this is behavior nobody on the left should condone, where protesting is fine, but they she was locked in a room. She was not safe to come out because they were threatening her for speaking out on this. And
what?
I think we all agree here that isn't acceptable.
That's crazy, man. Yeah, that's crazy
for anybody. But yeah, the Leah Thomas story. Do you know when she transitioned?
I'll get back to you on that. It was similar to the MMA fighters. I know she was like well into her 20s, like past, puberty age,
Okay.
so relevant to the conversation. Yeah, she was past the point of,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And I don't even know when like boys and girls, like I don't even know when they like how much of it, because you hear things, and I mean I don't have any of this fact check, so I don't even believe it, but like you hear people say things like, oh, like Serena Williams is the best female tennis player, but when she competes against men she's like average against the male players. Like I don't know how profound the actual differences are with men and women when it comes
Right.
to
Right.
really, because I mean I know, like you said, I can say as much as men are stronger typically than women, men have a physical advantage over women, but how much of a like because that to me would be surprising. Like if someone told me to guess, I would have guessed like Serena Williams would do worse than maybe the best male tennis player, but I wouldn't think she would be like average in
Yeah.
among professional
Yeah.
players and men. So I don't know if that was true, but that is something that you hear said a lot. Oh, that word we didn't know was college.
Yeah, I thought so. So he was a competitive swimmer in college.
College.
Yeah, I thought so.
I've seen that word before too. I just had
It's like
never pronounced
collegiate.
it. Okay, so the woman I
You
was talking
being
about
fancy.
was Paula Stanton. Ex-UN teammate had nightmares for weeks after sharing locker room with Leah Thomas. Okay, she's insane for saying that. I do remember her saying that she went on to like one of these daily wire, but none of this justifies people physically threatening her ever.
That
But
right.
the fact,
Right.
yeah, but the fact that she was going on, instead of just talking about, see, this is where they lose people like me. Like she talks about, hey, this was unfair. We worked hard and I feel like I was disadvantaged. Like, fine. But then once you start saying, I felt uncomfortable in the locker room and
Oh
blah,
Lord,
blah,
yeah.
blah, like now you just seem like you seem transphobic.
Right,
Now
right,
you seem like
right.
you don't like this group of people, and this group of people make you uncomfortable, and you're not just in it because you're worried about the disadvantage for cis women. And that really bothered me a lot when she said that, because if that's really how you felt, if having a trans woman in the locker room with me is a no, I mean I've shown my tits to the whole world, so maybe I'm not gonna do them, but but in general that should not, I just spent all this time saying we should pay attention to women's feelings and we should be respectful of them, but not when those women are operating purely out of bigotry.
Yeah,
That,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. She
I
was
think
just her 15 minutes of fame. You know what I mean? Like she was trying to
yes.
like, yeah, no, that's crazy, man.
Yeah, that's crazy. All right, so we are nearing the end of the stream, so I'm gonna get on OnlyFans after this. But Orpheus, where can people find you? I just followed you on Instagram, so if you want on my Instagram, I don't follow that many people.
Yes, I'm a grandpa. I do not do Instagram like that. Like
Okay.
that's but fitness for T guys. That's my ad. Follow, ask me any questions. I'm pretty open, about anything. And also, obviously, support Jasmine. She is the bomb. I know y'all are about to go see her do her thing. Have fun. But I appreciate you so much. You're amazing. Thank you for having me on, and thank you to your audience.
Yeah, I actually really enjoy this conversation, Orpheus. You've been great. I'm so happy to have you on. And I do just want to make an announcement for anybody watching this. As long as you're like, if you're going to come on and just call names, you're not going to be serious, I don't want you on. But if there are any other people perfect, that's his. I'm going to follow that too, because I don't think is that the one I'm following? Is that the one you messaged
Where
me?
we were messaging, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Because I was just reading the name. Okay, because I did follow that then. But if anybody else has a topic like Orpheus did, where he messaged me and he's like, hey, I want to discuss this more. Also, Orpheus, I'm so sorry about a couple weeks ago. If you guys remember, I was really sick a couple weeks ago and I had to cancel the stream. Orpheus was actually supposed to come on that day, and I didn't even have the chance to tell him that I was sick and the stream was canceled. So I really apologize for that. Thank you so much for being flexible and coming on tonight.
No worries. I'm glad you're feeling better. Yeah.
Thank you. I mean, I still have my cough, but I am feeling better. But yeah, if anybody has if anybody like Orpheus has a topic like this that you want to educate me on, or you disagree with me on, or you want to have a discussion on, I really enjoy streams like this. And so you guys can DM me on Instagram for that. And besides that, anything else you want to say?
You guys, good night. Have fun. Wink, wink.
Have fun.
I'll see you guys next week for whatever you talk about.
Thighs and waist to hip ratio. So if you want to go see what we're all about, okay.
Jasmine, you already know you're hot and sexy, girl. You know. You already. I don't have to tell you that.
Appreciate it so much. Thanks again. And you guys can follow me there. Make sure you follow Orpheus. He's been great. And I hope everybody has a good rest of your night.
All right. Good night.
Bye.
Bye.